will stay with it. Okay, they'll get past those tests on their character in relation to the Word, but over time, the test of time, they wear out. The lures of the world or of riches or whatever it is become more important to them than what they originally saw, and then there's no yield. So this is really showing all different levels. There are those who just don't understand it. It makes no sense to them, and then it's gone. There are those that get really excited, but when they're tested on it, it goes. There are those that commit to it, but eventually over time
they're worn down.
They're worn down. They're worn out. And then the final one.
But as for what was sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it, who indeed bears fruit and yields, in one case 100-fold, in another 60, and another 30.
So Jesus saying then there are those that actually the word not only takes root, but it grows, and they actually bear fruit. And he says, and there's different levels of fruit bearing as well. So he's explaining that the word that we're supposed to go out and preach, the word is going to be received in many different ways. And again, he doesn't seem worried about the fact that many are going to be rejecting it. Okay? We had talked before some of those calls, we were talking about Satan looking, to take the word away. Mm-hmm. We had mentioned that he did that with Eve. We won't read the scriptures because we're way short on time here. He tried to take the word away from Peter.
That's right.
Remember? And Jesus warned him, Satan's tried to sift you. He's tried to take you, but I've prayed for you. I'm protecting you, essentially. And then he tried to even take it from Jesus.
I know. Those 3 temptations.
Talk about the nerve of somebody, huh? Man, you are definitely treading on territory you shouldn't be. And the way Satan tried to do that with Jesus is he quoted Scripture. Misquoted, I might add, Scripture to Jesus. And Jesus understood it and put it in perspective. But the point is, Satan doesn't want it to progress. That's a key factor here. So here's the dilemma, Jonathan, that we are unfolding and discussing here. And folks, again, if you have a thought, give us a call at 860-442-6102. That's 442-6102. If you want to get into the first hour, call now because we're really getting near the end of the first hour. The dilemma that we're unfolding here is that Jesus gives this commission to go and make disciples of all nations. And yet in his own example of preaching, he doesn't make it easy to follow.
That's right.
So it's like, well, what's up with that? So we've got to continue to go through that. And again, I want to go back to Mike's call earlier on in the program because he mentioned something important. There are those who have a heart for God who will seek after, and those are the ones who seem to get it. Mm-hmm. So why are they privileged? Why is that? Let's go further and look at a few other things in terms of how Jesus handled the converting of the masses.
Let's read John chapter 5, verses 26 through 30. For as the Father hath life in himself, so hath he given to the Son to have life in himself. And he hath given him authority to execute judgment also, because he is the Son of Man. Marvel not at this, for the hour is coming, in which all that are in their graves shall hear his voice, and shall come forth, they that have done good unto the resurrection of life, and they that have done evil unto the resurrection of damnation. I can of mine own self do nothing. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just, because I seek not mine own will, but the will of the Father which hath sent me.
So Jesus is saying a number of things here, and now, instead of speaking in a very calm and matter-of-fact way about, okay, I'm here, I'm preaching this good news, and everybody's not going to understand, and it's prophesied that everybody's not going to understand. It's okay, we're going along with that. Now he's saying, okay, I've been given judgment authority by God. And he says, he talks about this resurrection. Now, the scripture, the translation, you read from the King James Version.
Right.
Okay? That translation in verse 29 talks about a resurrection of life, and they that have done evil unto a resurrection of damnation. Mm-hmm. That is a very, very, very bad translation. And it's easy to determine that, because in the very next verse, first of all, what's that word mean? That word that's translated damnation.
Okay. In the Greek, it's Strong's number 2920, and it means decision.
Okay.
A separating, sundering, separation, a trial, a contest, a selection.
Okay, that doesn't sound like damnation, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, and you say, okay, well, what gives us the right to say, well, that word is translated poorly there? Well, if you look in the next verse, Jesus continues speaking. He says, I can of mine own self do nothing. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just.
Mm-hmm.
The word judgment is the exact same word as the word in the previous verse.
Oh.
So
Okay.
it's one of those no-brainers. You look at it and say, okay.
It's a resurrection of judgment.
Exactly.
Ah.
Okay? It's a resurrection of separating. It's a resurrection of trial, contest, selection. That puts a whole different slant on what that verse means.
That's for sure.
It helps, I think, it helps it to be a little bit more clear. In these verses, we're beginning to get a sense, from Jesus' own words, of the difference between the two main bodies of people we're looking at. Okay? For the sake of simplicity, let's separate the world out into two categories.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, from a Christian standpoint. Okay, so we're going to be bold. We're going to say the entire world is going to fit into one of these two categories. Category number one, those who get it.
The believers.
Right. Those who get it, those who follow, those who live their lives, take up your cross, deny yourself, take up your cross and follow me.
Mm-hmm.
Category number two, those who don't. Okay, that we're going to make it that simple at this point.
Non-believers, okay.
I think that Jesus is looking at the world in that category in these verses, because he says, and let's go through this again, marvel not at this, the hour is coming in which all that are in their graves will hear the voice of the Son of Man and come forth. Those that have done good, I think he's talking about those that
The believers.
those that get it, unto a resurrection of life. In other words, they've been tried, they have been following, and they will be rewarded for that. But then it says, and they that have done evil, everybody else. Now, you can jump all over that and say, oh, okay, so you're going to say, even if I live a good life, I did evil? Well, the Scripture says that, and it's explaining that it's those that have not done the express will of God and following after Jesus.
Non-believers.
Right, okay? To a resurrection of judgment.
Judgment.
Now, that's a different thing. It's a different perspective, okay? We've got two categories. Both, and Julius mentioned this before, both receive a resurrection. Fred, were you going to say something?
Yeah, just going to say that the actual Greek word is our modern word crisis.
Right. Actually, I'm glad you brought that out, because the Greek word is literally spelled K-R-I-S-I-S. And, you know, when you look at a crisis, C-R-I-S-I-S, we know what that is. A crisis is a time where things can go one way or the other. When somebody's in the hospital, they're in a time of crisis, you're saying, okay, here's the time when you've got to work it out so you can pull them through. That's what this resurrection looks like it's about. In the second hour, we're going to get into more of this and how Jesus dealing with the conversion of the world, while it seemed to be not worried about it, actually was in line with a much greater plan that just needs more time to unfold. For Jonathan and Rick, this is Christian Questions. We'll be back in the second hour, but until then, what if they don't listen? Think about it.